We left off where Rowdy and Jayberry had trapped 2 monkeys in their net, but the smart $100 monkey sicked all the other monkeys on them, and they started attacking them. So here is where we'll pick up. Rowdy seemed to be more mixed up than I was. He just couldn't believe that a fight like that could have happened so fast and ended so fast. I looked over to where I had dropped my net. There it was, right where I had dropped it, wide open. Not a monkey in it. I couldn't believe it. How on earth could the little monkeys have gotten out of it? My first thought was that the yellow ring had gotten tangled in a bush, and while the monkeys were flouncing around and dragging the net over the ground, the net had opened. I glanced down at the yellow ring and almost jumped out of my shoes. I saw that it had been pulled all right, and it wasn't tangled in any bush. Mumbling to myself, I said, "Holy smokes, I'll bet while Rowdy and I were fighting the little monkeys, the big monkey sneaked in and opened the net." I was still trying to figure out how the monkeys had gotten out of my net when I heard a noise from the bur oak tree. I looked up into the branches. There, on a big limb, stood the big monkey. He was just standing there looking as proud as a general that had won a war. When the big monkey saw that I was looking up at him, he really made a fool out of himself. Staring straight at me, he started jumping up and down on the limb and uttering those deep grunts. He threw his head back and beat on his chest with his paws. Then he opened his big mouth and started laughing. He laughed so loud the bottoms rang with his monkey laughter. This made me so mad I all but choked. Shaking my fist at him, I yelled, "You're not such a brave monkey. You sicked those little monkeys on Rowdy and me, but you didn't do any fighting. What's the matter? Are you scared? If you'll come down here, we'll fight you all over these bottoms." The big monkey must have understood what I said. He stopped laughing, and with a few grunts, he started dropping down from the tree. My hair flew straight up. "Rowdy," I said as I picked up my empty net, "I don't know about you, but I've had all the monkey fighting I want for one day. Let's get out of here." I didn't have to tell Rowdy but once. He felt about monkey fighting like I did. He was way ahead of me when we tore out down the game trail. We hadn't gone far when I looked back over my shoulder and saw that there were no monkeys chasing us. "Rowdy," I said as I walked over and sat down on a sycamore log, "I think we can stop running now. Maybe we can't whip those monkeys, but we can sure outrun them." Taking my handkerchief out of my pocket, I started dabbing my monkey bites. Rowdy sat down on his rear and started licking his wounds. "Rowdy, if you think we're a mess now, you haven't seen anything yet. Just wait until we go home and have a face-to-face with Mama and Daisy. Mama will probably whip me and lock you up in the corn crib. If we had a little monkey and a few groceries, we'd just leave the country and never come back. But we don't have any money, and I don't think either one of us could do without something to eat for very long." Rowdy seemed to understand what I had said because he stopped licking his wounds and looked toward the house. With a little whimper, he came over and started licking at the monkey bites on my hands. I patted him on the head and said, "You'd better take care of yourself, boy. You're in worse shape than I am." The more I thought about going home, the more I dreaded it. I thought about going to the store and seeing if Grandpa could help me in some way, but that wouldn't have done me any good. Sooner or later, I would still have to go home. "Well, Rowdy," I said, "I guess there's but one thing we can do. We'll just have to take what's coming to us, and that's all there is to it. But I don't like it. I don't like it at all." I could tell by the way Rowdy's tail drooped down between his legs that he didn't like it either. Chapter 8. Daisy must have seen Rowdy and me coming up through our fields because she was standing on the porch when we came walking up. With the frown on her face, she peered at us. Letting out a low whistle, she said, "Holy smokes, Jayberry, what happened to you and Rowdy? Both of you look like you've been run through a briar patch." "Oh, Daisy, didn't nothing happen to us. We just had a little fight with those monkeys and they bit us a few times, that's all." "A few times?" Daisy said. "It doesn't look like a few times to me. It looks like those monkeys just about ate you up." Before I could say anything else, Daisy turned and hollered through the open door of the house, "Mama, Mama, come and look at Jayberry and Rowdy. Rowdy. They're chewed all to pieces and there's blood all over 'em." This time, Mama must have been peeling potatoes when she heard Daisy yell, because she still had one in her hand when she came flying out the door, scared half to death. "Blood?" Mama said in a quavering voice, looking at Daisy. "Who's bleeding?" "Jayberry and Rowdy, Mama," Daisy said as she pointed with her hand. "Look at 'em. They look like they've been run through a briar patch." With more scare in her eyes than I had ever seen before, Mama looked at me and said, "Jayberry, are you all right?" "Oh, Mama, you know how Daisy is. She's just trying to make something big out of nothing. I'm all right. I just got bit a few times by those monkeys, that's all." Looking up toward the heavens, Mama closed her eyes and muttered something that no one could have understood. Daisy came over, took hold of my arm, and started looking at my monkey bites. Shaking her head and making little clicking noises with her tongue, she said, "Jayberry, I'm scared half to death." "Scared?" I said. "What are you scared of? The monkeys didn't bite you." "I don't care. I'm scared just the same. We don't know anything about those monkeys. For all we know, they may have hydrophobia." I wanted to say something, but I couldn't get my mouth open. My stomach got all knotted up, and I shivered a little like I was having a cold chill. I looked to Mama for help. Mama couldn't help anyone right then, because she was just as scared as I was. She just stood there staring at me with her face as white as a hen's egg. Her mouth opened, and I thought she was going to say something, but nothing came out. People in the Cherokee Hills were so scared of hydrophobia they didn't talk about it in a loud voice. They usually spoke about it in whispers. When news spread through the hills that a mad animal was prowling, windows and doors were locked. Everywhere the menfolk went, they carried their guns and rifles. Until the mad animal was taken care of, children were kept indoors and all animals were brought into the barn. While hanging around my grandpa's store, I had heard some weird tales about animals and people that had gone mad with hydrophobia. How they had frothed at the mouth and their eyes had turned as green as cucumbers. In the dark of night, they would prowl through the country, howling and moaning and biting everything that got close to them. It was enough to scare a fella clean out of his britches. Daisy saw that she had me paralyzed with fear, and she started carrying on again. "Mama, there's not but one thing we can do," she said. "We'll just have to chain him and Rowdy to the fence post." This seemed to shake some of the scare out of Mama. "Chain him to a fence post?" she said in a loud voice. "Why, Daisy, what on earth are you saying?" "Well, that's all we can do, Mama," Daisy said. "That's all you can do with anything that's going mad. You have to chain them to something and watch them. If their eyes turn green and they start foaming at the mouth and biting things, then you'll know they're mad. It wouldn't do any good to tie him up with a rope. If he does go mad, he would gnaw right through it." Daisy had me so scared by now that I could almost feel myself frothing at the mouth and snapping at everything that got close to me. I think I would have gone mad for sure if Papa hadn't come walking up about that time. Frowning, Papa looked at Mama and said, "What's the matter? You look like you've seen a ghost." Before Mama could say anything, Daisy popped up and said, "It's Jayberry again, Papa. He's really got himself into a mess this time. He and Rowdy had a fight with those monkeys and got bitten all over. For all we know, they may have hydrophobia." "Papa," I cried, "I think I'm going mad, and they're talking about chaining me to the fence post." Papa chuckled and said, "Oh, I don't think we'll have to do anything like that. Those monkeys belong to a circus and came in contact with people every day. They've probably been vaccinated for all kinds of diseases. A big circus like that wouldn't have taken a chance on having a bunch of sick monkeys around." Papa didn't know it, but he had practically brought me back from the dead. I began to feel a little better, but not very much. Regardless of what Papa had said, Daisy wasn't convinced that I wasn't going to go mad. "Just the same," she said, "I'm not taking any chances. I'm going to keep my eye on him, and I'm locking the door to my room every night. If he does go mad, I don't want him sneaking in and biting me." "Oh, for heaven's sakes," Mama said. "Now that will be enough out of you, young lady. You shouldn't be saying things like that." Papa said, "I think the best thing to do right now is to get something on those monkey bites. They could get infected." "I think so too," Mama said. Daisy said, Mama, you Dr. Jayberry and I'll take care of Rowdy. He wouldn't bite me even if he was going mad. Mama went in the house and came back with some clean rags, a bottle of peroxide, and some iodine. Every time Mama dabbed one of the bites with peroxide, I would have a dancing fit. But when she started putting that iodine on me, I yipped and hopped all over the place. By the time she was through, I felt like I had been boiled in a wash pot. All the time Mama was doctoring me, I could hear Daisy cooing and talking to old Rowdy. He was whimpering and whining and licking Daisy's hand and begging her not to put that stinging, burning stuff on him. Daisy was a little more artistic with her doctoring than Mama was. She wrapped Rowdy's monkey bites with all kinds of bright-colored rags and tied them in bows. When she was through with him, he looked like a Christmas present. Rowdy took one look at himself and was so disgusted with what he saw, he scooted right under the house. I couldn't help laughing a little. The next morning, I was so sore and stiff I couldn't get out of bed and make it to the breakfast table. I was lying there feeling sorry for myself and thinking about all that money down in the bottoms hopping around in those trees when Mama, Papa, and Daisy came into my room. Papa looked at me and asked, "How do you feel?" "I don't feel so good, Papa," I said. "I'm as sore and stiff as an old hound dog that's been chasing a fox all night." Daisy giggled and said, "Jayberry, if you think you're in bad shape, you should see old Rowdy. He's so sore and stiff he can't even wiggle his tail. He wouldn't come out from under the house to eat his breakfast." With a concerned look on her face, Mama reached over and placed her hand on my forehead. "Why, Jayberry," she said, "you have a little fever. I think you had better forget about this monkey catching and stay in bed for a few days." The way I was feeling, I didn't even argue with Mama. As if my getting eaten up by the monkeys was one of the most wonderful things that had ever happened in our family, Daisy squealed her delight and said, "Mama, if you're going to make him stay in bed for a few days, then I'll get to practice my Red Cross nursing on him again." When I heard Daisy mention that Red Cross nursing business, I started getting out of bed. "Oh, no, you won't," I said. "You're not practicing any of that stuff on me. I'm not sick enough to go through that ever again." Placing both of her hands on my shoulders, Mama pushed me back down in the bed and said, "You just stay put, young man. Somebody has to doctor you, and besides, your little sister is a pretty good nurse." I wanted to argue, but knew that it was useless. To win an argument with both Mama and Daisy was unheard of. I figured that the misery would last for only a couple of days and I could put up with anything for that long. This Red Cross nursing business had popped up about a year back when I had had the mumps, and Daisy had read to me a story about a Red Cross nurse. From the day she read that story, Daisy was bound and determined that when she grew up, she was going to be a Red Cross nurse. She saved enough money to order some material that was the same color as the Red Cross nurses' uniforms. With Mama's help, she made a uniform complete with an armband and a dinky little hat. It got to be a common sight to see Daisy fluttering around in her nurse's uniform, doctoring everything that was sick and a lot of things that weren't sick at all. She took care of the pigs, chickens, calves, cats, birds, Rowdy, me, and everything else you could think of. She took care of all my busted toes, scratches, bruises, and boils. If I came down with a bad cold or the flu, Daisy would put on her uniform and go to work. I never saw anything like it. "Mama," Daisy said, "do you think we could get old Rowdy into Jayberry's room? If I had both of them in the same room, it sure would help a lot. That way I could watch both of them at the same time." Mama smiled and said, "I don't know about that. If Rowdy is as sore and stiff as you say he is, the only way we could move him would be to carry him, and that old hound is pretty heavy." Daisy thought a second and said, "Mama, we could put him in a wheelbarrow and row him in." "Yeah," Mama said, nodding her head. "We might be able to do that." I felt sorry for Rowdy, but there wasn't a thing in the world I could do about it. I didn't figure they could catch him anyway. Boy, was I wrong. It wasn't long until I heard the screeching of our old wheelbarrow coming through the house, with Rowdy about half in the wheelbarrow and half hanging out. They wheeled him into my room. Daisy made a pallet for him over in the corner. The next time Daisy entered my room, she was all decked out in her nurse's uniform. It was starched as stiff as a gingerbread man. She had a tray in her hands. To me, it looked like she had all the medicine we had in our house on it. There was liniment, salve, iodine peroxide, castor oil, all kinds of clean rags torn in strips, several boxes of pills, and a glass half full of alcohol with a thermometer in it. "Good morning," Daisy said, smiling all over. "And how are my patients this fine morning?" "Oh, Daisy, you don't have to say that. You were here just 5 minutes ago." "I know," Daisy said, "but that's the way the nurses do it." Looking up to the ceiling and talking to myself, I said, "Brother, if I come out of this alive, I'll sure be lucky." Ignoring my remark, Daisy set the tray on the small table in the room and started looking over her nursing supplies. "Let's see now. I think I just have about everything I need right here." Rearing up on my elbows, I said, "Daisy, if you think I'm going to take all that stuff, you're crazy. Why, I'd be dead before the sun goes down." As if she were the best doctor in the whole wide world, Daisy said, "Oh, I don't think you'll have to take all of it, Jayberry, but I won't know just what kind of medicine you'll need until I examine you." Taking the thermometer, Daisy gave it a good shaking, walked over and dabbed it in my mouth. She felt my pulse, changed all the bandages on my monkey bites, and washed my face with a cool rag. Then she lit into Rowdy. She changed all of his bandages, washed his face, and got him a pillow to lay his head on. I had to admit that Daisy was a pretty good nurse, but it always made me feel uncomfortable lying there with her fussing around me that way. The first time Daisy brought me a glass of water, I was thirsty and drank every drop of it. 5 minutes later, she brought me a second glass, and I drank that too. 5 minutes later, she brought me a third glass, and I drank it, just to make her happy. It didn't seem like I had hardly drunk the third glass when she came with the fourth one. By this time, I was pretty well waterlogged, and I refused to drink it. With a scared look on her face, Daisy stepped back and said, "Jayberry, are you sure you don't want any more water?" "Sure, I'm sure. What's the matter with you anyway?" Before I hardly knew what was taking place, Daisy yelled, "Mama, you better come here right now." Mama came running, scared half out of her wits. Looking at me and seeing that I was still alive, she looked at Daisy and said, "What's wrong now?" With a sorrowful look on her face, Daisy said, "I think we'd better get the chains, Mama. He just quit drinking water, and you know what that means." "No," Mama said. "I'm afraid I don't know what it means." "What does it mean?" "It means he's going mad, Mama," Daisy said. "That's what it means. I looked up the word hydrophobia in the dictionary, and it said very plainly that anybody going mad refuses to drink water, and he just quit drinking water." I figured that it was about time for me to say something, or I would surely have to drink the well dry or be chained to a fence post. "Mama," I all but shouted, "I haven't quit drinking water. I just can't drink anymore. She brought me a glass of water every 5 minutes for an hour and a half. I've had so much water now, I feel like I'm a spring." Glancing at the glass of water Daisy held in her hand, Mama smiled and said, "I think we can forget about the chains for a while. It may be that you're overdoing this water thing." Rowdy put up with Daisy's nursing for 1 day. Then he hopped out the window, went back under the house, and refused to come out for anyone. It was 3 days before I saw the sunshine again, and I was never so happy in all my life. I was burning up with the monkey-catching fever, and I couldn't wait to get after it again. On the morning of the 4th day, I got my net and called to Rowdy, "Come on, boy. Let's go to the store and have another talk with Grandpa." Rowdy started out from under the house, but he never came all the way out, just his head. On seeing the net in my hands, he turned around and went back. I saw right away that between Daisy's nursing and those monkeys, Rowdy had had it. Getting down on my knees, I peered back under the house. I could see Rowdy way back in the farthest corner. "Come on, boy," I coaxed. "I'm not going monkey hunting. I'm going to the store. Don't you want to come along?" I could hear a lot of tail thumping, whimpering and whining, but Rowdy still refused to come out. I begged and I pleaded. I promised him everything from fried rabbit to a red squirrel stew, but it did no good. Disgusted and feeling terrible, I took off down the road for Grandpa's store. I hadn't gone far when here came Rowdy, wiggling all over and tickled to death. Once he had seen that I wasn't going to the bottoms where those monkeys were, he was willing to come along. "You should be ashamed of yourself, Rowdy," I said. "A great big dog like you scared of little old monkeys." I really didn't mean what I had said to Rowdy, because way down deep, I was just as scared of those monkeys as he was, but I was still determined to catch every last one of them. Grandpa must have been expecting me, because just before I got to the store, he came out onto the porch and looked down the road. On seeing me, he sat down in his favorite chair and waited for me. And that's where we're going to leave it. Keep listening.